Hello, and welcome to Neltharus Tank Guide. It's going to be covering uh, mostly things that we do in hierarchies, potential strategies as well. It's going to assume you know the basic mechanics. I might touch on them a bit, but yeah. Anyways, let's get started. All right. So the first pull here, we're pretty much going to pull the entire room, I guess. So we're gonna go left here and we're gonna pull everything. I think what I want to do here is actually use nitro boosts in the next runs that I do. But the main thing is just get aggro on this. You're probably going to have to pop some kind of cooldowns. You make sure you have Blood Plague on everything. Rune Weapon is actually okay to use on the run here because you get hit pretty much the entire time, and so you actually just get it up again, as you'll see here. So ideally, you want to be facing the frontals away. It's a little tricky, but then you want to have your entire group do chains. You as a tank do not have to unless there is a leftover hunter alive. You could do that, but it's not really necessary. 4 chains is plenty, especially if your group is putting damage into the wardens as you're running there. So the next pull is going to be double caster. So just usually 2 interrupts per caster is enough. So usually it's going to be like me on one, I have the warrior on another, and let's see, we have 2 range or 3 range actually, and they usually take one, and then melee kick should be back up for the 3rd cast, and it's mostly plenty. You generally want to be focusing these down anyways, because after you kill these, you can actually just chain into the next pack. And the same thing here. Probably don't really have to go through it. Yeah, if you do have a warrior, you can reflect that channel there. So just be aware that that can happen. So we'll skip on ahead. It's pretty much the same thing. Just there's a couple tank busters, but they're really not that bad. They're physical, so you can parry and all that stuff. Now Magma Tusk. The idea here is you want to be max melee range, and you want to have good baits. What do good baits look like exactly? That one was pretty close. It might even be too close. But you'll see here, like I'm tanking pretty close to the fire. It's usually not too big of an issue. What you can do is you can just stay on the opposite side of the boss as the DPS. The goal is to kind of bait where there is no fire. And you want to make sure you bait out of corners if you are in one. So you'll see I'm pretty much baiting puddles into the wall, or heck, as a blood DK, you can just stand in the puddles and they don't really do anything. When the swirl drops by itself, then that is when you will take a lot of damage, but outside of that, it's really nothing. So you'll see the next bait is going to be towards spawn because the fire is disappearing. And then I always try and pre-move so that I can position the boss out of fire as soon as possible because you really don't want to have the boss on the puddles like ever. The exception is when there are no dots, but as the fight goes on, the dot is just going to get longer and longer and longer. So the window is just going to be a lot smaller there. So you see now it's 24 seconds. There isn't really any leeway. So now it's like at its most important that I move the boss out of the fire as soon as possible. And that's pretty much the fight. It's all positioning and baiting charges so that like you have enough room, or like DPS has enough room. You basically just have good baits and cycle through defensives, and this is just another one of those healer check dungeons. So I guess something worth noting is you can use Parasol. It works like half the time. But you can actually jump down onto this ledge here, and then you should be good. So now we go to chains. Basically, we pull the entire room, and you'll see how I gather that here in a second. Ideally, you want to get some kind of aggro. You can rune weapon the mini boss, and that'll help you generate some aggro, do some damage to it while you're running through. And right here is when I pop a bomb limb, so I can start gripping the far mobs one by one. And then it's the same thing here. You want to have the frontals pointed away. And something to note here that I forgot to mention on the last set of chains. What you want to do is you want to let your Shadow Priest do chains first. That way they can mass dispel the bursting. Because you're going to take an absurd amount of bursting stacks. I think it's like 12 or 13. Ideally, they would all die at the same time. That didn't happen, so that's why it's kind of funky. Here's the chain boss. There isn't too much to note. So what we usually do with chains, we either do one at a time or two and then one. Usually melee will just break theirs first, right? And then really the only thing that I even do is just like I make sure that melee DPS doesn't immediately get hit by the fiery focus, the circle right here. So that's really it for this fight. Skip ahead. And I guess like something to note as well. It's, if you have something like Beacon, you can use it during the damage amp when you stun the boss. And this is another instance of pulling the entire room and chaining it all down. You'll notice I don't have rune weapon for a bit. I do have to pop Vampire, and yeah, I'm trying to make sure that I blood boil all the mobs that drop down. This last one in particular is kind of weird, because the way it aggroes. You pull in the birds and then they wake everyone up, right? So same thing here. Bait frontals away if you can. Use slappy hands to grip everything closer if they are out. And then it should only take 4 chains. And yeah. So that time it actually only took 3, but yeah. And then one thing to also note is that if you have someone with Dragon Isles cooking, I think it's at 25, you can use this right here and it'll give everyone this buff and you can use it outside of combat to get some movement speed. It also heals you. And just keep in mind it has, I think, 3 total charges. Yeah. Now we're on this pole. The main thing is to interrupt the melts. You can use a stop on the moat. That's most efficient. If you use stops on the melts, they actually insta recast. So AoE stuns are best used on the melts, and then something like Incap Roar or Blind is good for moats. And I guess also delaying their cast. The downside of doing that is they all get synced up, so just be aware of that. And since we have Lust ready, we're going to skip this pack here, and we're going to play it later. So same thing here. Stops on the Iron Torches are going to be ideal with AoE stuns or beams and kicks on the melts. And then once the melts are actually dead, you can actually just chain these 3 mobs into this pack. And then the same thing goes for this. The flares, you can just kill them off. And then pull the pack down here. Also, something that you want to do is you want to make sure you interrupt the, I think it's Dragon Bone something from the Bone Splitters. I usually make sure I save a grip for that. And it's more or less the same thing here. At this point, you want to prio the blacksmith because that will be the only thing alive. You'll see right here. Well, we did a good job at prioing it, so the lava bear was alive for a while, but that's fine. So now with this boss, since we're skipping this pack over here, you're gonna want to make sure you coordinate with your group where you're gonna be dumping all the circles. And then they should be positioned so that they can not have to worry about that. See there. And then it's pretty much just like rotate defensives. It's a healer fight. Now, as a Blood DK, you can use AMS to negate the slow when you're in the fire. Then the other thing that you can do is you can Death's Advance after you get knocked away. So after here, you can press DA. You want to do it ideally while you're in the air so that you don't get hit like I did there. And that's pretty much the fight. Now with this route, we're just going to be pulling this, killing the flares, and then we're going to chain over to the commander. We're gonna kill the commander and the lava bearers by themselves. It's a bit safer this way. But there is a bit that you can do here, a bit of snapping shenanigans. In hindsight, we probably could have pulled that patrol on the staircase that we skipped before and just snap these down for time. We're playing this. There's 2 bone splitters here, so it's usually what I'm saving my grips for. Or, stops as well. We're going to skip ahead here. Now, you can chain this pack right here. You'll see I'm going to pull it. I actually use rune weapon so that I can gather some threat. And then we pull some hunters. Now the chains do not work on the wardens or the bird. They work on the trainees and the hunters. It's just that everything else can actually explode when you use it on the hunters and trainees. And yeah, you'll see I absolutely just struggle to live. I have no cooldowns. And unfortunately, all the hunters and trainees are dead, so ideally what would happen is you would have like 2 or 3 people use chains, pull in another hunter, and then do the same thing with the rest of the chains. That way you don't have to deal with the wardens. And then once you finish them off, you can invis past this. The wardens have sight. The lava mancers do not. And once you get past them, you can actually just walk by here. These money bags. And then the last boss. We got absolutely trolled because I think everyone pretty much just got charge. Really not sure how to go about this. If you just get really shitty RNG. But ideally you would only have like 1 person get charge, and then that person can just pick up an extra one. Or if I have purgatory available and I get charged, it's like that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Ideally you would use your toy and then just like immediately back up so you're not just dying to the swirls, right? And that's pretty much it for this boss. This is where we get like 4 or 5 charges or something like that. Yep. Yeah, actually all 5 of us had charge here. Yeah. It's the worst RNG I've ever seen on this fight. It's crazy. And that was also after people were picking up other treasures to try and get different rules. It was bad. But one last thing I want to touch on, I guess, is you can actually snap really any mob that you want up here. So you can snap the commander. What we could have done, like I said, was we pull the patrol, and then we should have pulled the commander with the lava bearers. and then you can actually snap them down. Let me skip ahead. You snap them about here-ish on this, like above this ramp. I would play it safe and kind of wait for them to snap before pulling that pack. So you'd be like around here, and it takes a few seconds for them to stop evading. It is pretty dangerous to do on Fort because you have a lot of group-wide damage going out. But so yeah, you'd pull a commander there, you'd yada yada yada, and then I think ideally you would delay some of these hunters. So probably pull these two in. 3 people use chains or something, and then tank should run over to. Let's see if I turn around here. There's a pack on this side over here at the end of the hallway. If you can see it, they're over there. There's also chains over here. And then you just have 2 people use the chains, and then everything should die. Hopefully. We opted not to snap. It was mostly my decision. Just because I felt it was going to be way too dangerous. Yeah, I think once the Great Push comes out, we're gonna see a lot of chain shenanigans. Chances are we're gonna see a lot of people do some interesting skips where we skip as much as possible and then pull everything on the chains. And that's Necrotic Wake.